Hello and welcome to another episode of the Kitabi Karwan Podcast. Today's guest is a personal favorite. She has written some of the best pieces of fiction I've read ever since I was a child. The one and the only Anuja Chauhan. I don't think I can give her any description that describes whatever she's done in life, but a quick one would be she's perhaps been the queen of advertising, coming up with amazing slogans such as Dil Maange More, and later on just dabbled in fiction and given us amazing works such as the Zoya Factor and the personal favorite, The Battle for Bittora. So my chat with Anuja Chauhan was quite amazing, and so what I decided to do was split this interview into two episodes so that you don't miss out on any tidbit by Anuja Chauhan. So without any further ado, here's the first part.
Hi Anuja, how happy to have you here. And this is to everyone out there who can see how happy I am. This is because I'm interviewing one of my favorite authors, and this is going to be so ignore all my nervousness or faux pas during this entire thing. So Anuja, uh, I actually don't even know where to start, but I'll actually ask you this. Um, Tell us something about yourself which is not there in your books. Like your blogs are genuinely very interesting, and all of us, I think, know about your general uh, stuff that who you are as a person, but I'm looking for something that's something that people wouldn't know about, something that your book clubs don't carry.
I don't know. I think I actually live my life very publicly. In fact, the biggest complaint everyone has from me is that, like, you throw everything in. What are you doing? So I think if you look carefully in my books, everything is there. It may be veiled or disguised or hidden under several layers, but I
Hmm.
put everything out there. I really do. So yeah,
Okay,
I
that
don't really
seems
have any deep secrets. In fact, like people keep talking about like, oh, now there's this the surveillance, and now with the government knows everything about you, and don't put all your settings on public and stuff. But I'm like,
hmm.
I don't really have anything to hide. So okay, it's all out there.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I kind of get what you mean. Like ever since I've started like reading your work, it always felt that there is, and that's something that I'm eventually going to get to, that there is this warm connection that I think most, at least all of your readers that I have discussed this with, feel with you, just because they feel that they know who you are as a person when they're getting to the books. It might be not just through the books, but through your interviews, through your social media. And because you've been writing pre social media phase also, right? Since Zoya Factor came out in 2006, 7, I think, before all
2008.
this. Yeah, oh, seven,
Yeah,
8, I'm sorry. Right. So
yeah.
it just, and like when all of us read it, like back in 10th grade, 11th grade, it was just, okay, this was just booming back then. Like it hadn't reached this phase where you could go online and look up authors and find out about them.
Hmm.
But it still just
Hmm.
felt that there is this, like, so I get what you mean. And that just brings me to the first question I have. And this is something, so often you feel that authors kind of try and put their own personality into the characters. Like there are some authors who claim that their uh, protagonists are complete figments of their imagination. But I've often
Hmm.
felt that while writing, a person might end up pouring themselves out into their characters. Do you think that's something that happens? Like I personally, I'm inclined to believe it does, but I just want to know how the process works with you.
No, to me, see, when you write a character, there's a point at which they become alive when you're writing them.
Right.
Initially, it may feel a little mechanical. You're describing like physical, what they look like and what little visual tics or eccentricities they may have, which is like more superficial. But as you keep writing it, there's a point where you know that person. That there's a very nice
Hmm.
magical moment where like the character takes over and starts writing himself and or
Right.
herself, and that is really exciting. And I think that always comes from your raw data, your life, your
Right. Right.
experiences, people you've known or met. And then after you may not even realize, and later on you're like, oh my God, this is cousin so and so, or this is that Chandigarh Wale Mama Ji. And you've not
Right.
realized, and you have made Chandigarh Wale Mama Ji into like the BCCI ka president, and you don't even know you've done that. So I think that your life data is the best thing, the way you observe things, the backstories you have in your head. And of course, like, it goes through a filtration process when it gets turned into fiction. But I think it's always best when you're drawing from life. And I find I always enjoy those books the most. Like, for example, if you look at Vikram Seth is shameless. Like, I'm surprised he hasn't been sued much more than he has, because apparently he puts everybody, like all his family, all his friends are in his books. That's why they're just so richly observed, and you feel very like privileged when you read that stuff.
It's perfectly true. Like, I mean, I think I enjoy reading those characters more which sound something that I've seen in real life, or something I can associate from. And I think the more raw data, as you put it, an author builds it on, makes that character much more real, I guess. And that's just something
Yeah,
that people
yeah.
as
There's a point where they stop sounding like someone you've read or someone you've seen in a movie. That
correct,
is the good. When it hits
exactly.
that, you're like, yeah, that's
So, so that's something that makes me think about when. So when you end up writing about any character in your book, that's somewhat based on your own raw data, not about your observations, but someone who's
yeah,
based on
yeah,
you, right?
yeah.
And because of how your books are structured, we get to delve into a lot about their emotional status and how they function, how they're thinking, especially the protagonist. It's you
Hmm.
have a complete point of view of what they're thinking about, how they're processing each insecurity or each action. Do you sometimes feel very vulnerable while writing such characters, that you're putting out, like, just exposing weight? Like, I mean, I get it. You just said that you are very open as a person, and that's great. I mean, I do get that there are people like that,
Hmm.
but this is another level of intimacy that we're talking about
Hmm.
disclosing your thought process, or how you're dealing with rejection, or like any sensitive matter on your own personal part.
Yeah, but I'm cool with that. Like, that does happen. It's like whatever. I find that I deal better. Like, you walk lightly when you don't carry baggage, and books are a great place to like chuck all your baggage and get over with it. So
Right.
I'm quite happy to do that. And yeah, sometimes you feel like a little cheap, like you're throwing in stuff, but nothing really horrific has happened to me, or nothing that I consider really horrific.
Right.
Other people may consider it horrific, but nothing so um, awful that I feel that I'm somehow, cheapening it by sharing it in a book or something like that. Nothing like that's really come my way. Or maybe I just don't perceive experiences like that, you know. So
Right.
I don't have a problem using it. Sometimes I worry that somebody might read it and might feel that, oh, this is about me, or she's talking about her equation with me and stuff like that. That I worry about a little, because I worry about hurting other people. But with me,
Right.
whatever failures or shame or anything I have, I don't mind putting it out. I also feel like in just some conversations in life with your children or anyone else you're trying to build
Right.
a relationship with or get a connection with, the thing that brings people closest to you is when you share your own stuff, like your own secrets or your own failures or your insecurities or your humiliations, which you may not want to tell people. I feel when you share that, then people share with you, and that just leads to a more enriching conversation, or a better relationship, and things. So I'm fine sharing that data. I don't have any issue with
No, absolutely right, because I think, again, honesty in characters or honesty in writing is something that appeals a lot to someone who's reading it in general. That
it.
it just feels
Mm.
far more in you're far more involved in what's happening, because it just doesn't seem
Yeah,
like fictitious after a point of time, as you said, that they stop being characters in a book or a movie, or they just become people, or like someone, in some cases, someone
mm.
like you,
Mm.
right? That brings me to something I really wanted to talk to you about for like a really long time, because ever since I've been reading your books, this is something that I've faced on a personal level, and this is something I know a lot of other people face. Is that so? Somehow, because your most of your books have these female leads, right? Female protagonists, and um, I know you've spoken about being your work being called chicklit like chicklit fiction in general, which I totally disagree with. But that is something that I've faced. Like, I barely know like other males in and around me who read and also read your work, right? And
Hmm.
that a lot of it is coming from that apprehension about, oh, we're just diving into this category which may or may not be macho. I'm not saying
Hmm.
that is an explicitly said thing, but more often than not, that's what happens. Do you think that
Hmm.
is I mean, I know that it's a issue out there, right? Like males not reading a book which has a female protagonist simply because they deem it to be too feminine, whatever that is. But do you think there is a way to change that? Is there a possible way of, I know, going about things, or not in the way for you to change your writing style, but as to how do we change the discourse at a larger level?
I just think that when you meet a new person, especially like, when you guys are like, you're all in your 20s, and, I mean, like, the search is still on, right? I mean,
Yeah.
not people like us who are old and settled in our little ruts in a happily ever after. But I'm saying that in this decade,
Hmm.
you will make meaningful connections if you are interested in the other person and the other person's face. So I think there is nothing more cooler or more appealing or more hot than a
Hmm.
young man standing in a Delhi metro for a young woman to be looking at him, and if he's holding one of my books, I think the girl might be very happy. It's like, I'm just saying, without sounding vain or whatever, but, cocky or something. But I'm saying, if I see a boy holding a book that I really like, which is maybe considered a girly book, I might just think, what an interesting guy, I would like to know.
Yeah.
Like boys say it's always really hot to meet a girl who plays like Call of Duty, or something. And then so they're like, man, she came over and we game together. So it's like, wow, what a chick. So you always get like, it's always exciting when the other person is interested in what you're interested in. And you discover a new world, right? So at the end, so I think like these gender stereotypes we have of this is for this person, this is lot. There's lots of joy to be had with with exploration generally, and exploration in what are traditionally considered male and female zones. If you do that, you make the most amazing discoveries. There's so many books that I wouldn't have read because people are like, oh, don't read Catch 22. It's like a war book. It's a guy's book. It isn't. It's an amazing book. Everyone should read Catch 22. It's like peppered with the most amazing characters. Every chapter, there's another new crackpot you come to know. So why is somebody saying because it's a war book, or it's like they're only men in that book, so therefore girls should read it? It's stupid. It's a great book. And similarly, you might really like, I don't know, The Mill on the Floss or something, which is
Hmm.
like considered very cheeky, but it's actually about a girl and her brother and their whole equation through life. So
Yeah.
so I would just generally urge young people, and I think we should all make a rule for ourselves to just like ignore the labels. Like, just
Yeah.
ignore that label. If somebody says this guy is a Sanghi, or this one is
Hmm.
a liptard, or this one is a
Hmm.
feminist, or I mean, like, this is just stupid. Just meet the person, see how you go.
Yeah.
I mean, everything is out there, like, suck it and see with everything, na? And they
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why? Who is anybody to tell you that this is what you should wear and this is what you should read and these are the games that are okay for you to play? It's just idiotic. Why are you dumbing your world down? That's all I would say to kids generally, that they shouldn't.
Right. No, that's absolutely right. I mean, and that's something I think that just comes with over time. Like I remember when I started reading your work, I do remember having that apprehension about, oh, the judgment from society. And now I've just reached that comfortable
Yeah,
space where I'm like I want to read her work. I really like her what she writes, and I don't really care what you label it as. It's just something that I
yeah,
explored. I like that area, and I like that style of writing. I don't really want to get into what she want. You might call it or not. Like you call it whatever you want. I like
sure,
it. I
sure.
like reading it.
Yeah. And of course, like,
And
you might get trolled in a big way, like your friends might say, like your guy friends. So maybe the
mm,
girls may be impressed, but for you, the issue probably would be like, guys are saying, what are you reading? Yeah, what kind of a cover is this? What kind of a book is this? So
yeah,
I guess that that is more, it's peer pressure, isn't it? At the end of
yeah,
the day, that young people especially are vulnerable to. I mean, everybody is, but I think for younger people who aren't so sure and are sort of works in progress, trying to decide who they are as
right,
people and what their opinions are. And so I guess peer pressure hits at you, and this is a very light, unimportant thing, like your choice
right,
of book, but it hits on
right,
everything possible. You're seeing a situation like this boys locker room today, again, that's about
right,
peer pressure. There are like so many boys
right,
in that group just keeping quiet. So I
right,
think generally it makes sense to make your own decisions and not just do what everybody seems to be doing.
Mhm. No, it's very interesting when you mention peer pressure in this regard, like of reading books, because that's something I've spoken about in my earlier interviews with other authors, and I want your opinion on this as well. Is where so it's the same way you have, like, say, a guy judging another guy for, say, reading a feminine book. There is
Yeah,
also this classes divide that exists in reading, wherein,
sure.
say,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
like you'll have someone, oh, you're reading Arundhati Roy, you're this intellectual person, or if you're reading something, I don't know, maybe Chetan
Anuja
Bhagat, I
Chauhan.
don't know, or no, like, maybe Anuja Chauhan for that matter. I don't know. Like, I
Yeah,
personally, like, I've been lucky enough that
yeah.
all my friends who are your fans are somehow also read other so-called intellectual stuff, so it's never been that issue. But I know for a fact there are people who face this, who have
Mm,
been trolled for like reading Chetan Bhagat and enjoying it, or reading,
mm,
and it's not, after one line doesn't go into gender; it goes into the kind of work that you're reading. Personally, I
mm,
love your work for something like I've heard this criticism for your work, wherein your use of English, like these common Hindi words in this thing, or where it's just not very literature sounding work. If I can, like, that's the best possible summary of that critique I can put. And I never kind of understood where that comes from, and that personally also becomes an issue, because I think uh, every book that comes out is a story that is being told. Like, India is a huge country, there are so
mm.
many stories, so many different unique points of view that are to be brought out. And then you have this, like, this just creates this unnecessary barrier towards reading, that, oh, you read this it's good, you read this, it's bad, something like that.
Mm,
So
mm.
do you think that is actually affecting the literary scene out in India? Like, you feel that people, like authors or readers, are discouraged from doing these things, from, I don't know, exploring new work in that sense, which might not be.
You know what I mean, publishing, I just feel, is in such a sad state in our
Mhm.
country. One is just the fact that there's so, I write in English, so naturally I'd be biased and I'd be talking about, people who
Mhm.
write in English. Is that the reader base is so few, hardly any books get bought. You know,
Mhm.
if you just look at, like, 1.3 billion people, and like if a book sells 20,000 copies, they say it's a bestseller. So
Yeah.
you just see, right? So you see how small that group is.
Yeah.
Per se, publishers, I think what I'm finding more and more is that either they're looking for new writers who will be
Mhm.
so grateful to be published that they won't ask for any money, or they look for people who are so successful, like movie stars or
Mhm.
cricketers or someone like that, that they don't really need the money from publishing. So then it's kind of like a vanity publishing. Those are
Right.
the two categories that they really go for. Nobody is really looking to grow the bank of career writers, like people who do this
Mhm.
for a living and who will produce, say, maybe 10 or 20 works of, in their lives. So
Right.
there's that. So the reading is not of a very good level. Either it is ghost written, for a celebrity, or it is written by someone who's like Ravinder Singh goes around saying very proudly that I've never read a single book in my life. I wrote my first book without reading any book at all.
Mhm.
So either that is the level, you're reading
Mhm.
books by someone who has never ever read a book
Read the
before,
book.
or
Right.
or you're reading a book by a movie star who is, I mean, like, nobody would have read his work if he wasn't a movie star, because that is not his core
Correct.
talent, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I think that the level itself is quite crap, and
Mhm.
the fact that there are a few people who are writers by profession, so that
Mhm.
group is anyway very small.
Mhm.
um I don't know, I mean, I've lost my thread a little, but I just want to say that I'm really, really proud of my readers. I'm very snooty and very proud of my readers, because I've realized over now, I've been writing for almost 12 years, is that my readers are like the cream. I'm read by people I respect, whose
Right.
humor I respect, who I find that girls I spoke to in LSR in 2012 are already of the top of their careers in 2020 and are
Right.
calling me and saying, ma'am, this and that. And, I'm like, wow. So I get really excited about the quality of my readership. And now I no
Right.
longer feel like I'm in some chiclet box or I'm in some other box. I feel I made a little box. It may be small, but it's a
Yeah.
quality box, and
Right.
I love writing for these people and trying to entertain these people who I feel get it. they
Right.
get where I'm coming from, and we
Yeah.
gel, and it's great to have that now. And I think
Mhm.
that again is a way of transcending these labels, and like this whole thing of like, oh, ye literary hai and ye commercial hai and ye boys
Mhm.
ke liye, ye girls ke liye, all that
Right.
kind of thing then goes out of the window. And I think that comes if you're writing, if that's what you do,
Mhm.
and writing is what I do. I write novels. I may
Right.
write ads and I may write movies, but this is my main thing.
Main thing. Right.
So yeah,
No,
sorry, went everywhere.
no, that's perfect. That's kind of the point of this entire podcast. But I really get what you mean. Like there is this now. I think Anuja Chauhan fans is like a category in itself. It's just something
So
like
sweet.
it's something you add
It's
on your.
small. It's a
No,
small category.
but
Sorry,
no, I actually don't think so. I mean, I've been. I know. I earlier used to think so. It's not that I haven't thought so, but I've been proven wrong, like by empirical data multiple times. Like there've been
wow.
couple of events where you've spoken, and one, I think this, I don't even know if you remember this event in 2015 around Valentine's Day. There was some event you did, I think at CCD something. It was a small
In
like it was
Bangalore.
supposed.
Yeah, in Bangalore, I
Yeah.
remember. Yeah,
No, this was
yeah.
in Delhi. This was in Delhi.
Oh,
This
in
was a
Delhi.
day
Okay.
before. This was a day before this thing. I was at South X. But anyway, not the point. There
Huh.
was just that I was expecting. Okay, like it's a small event, closed event, coffee house, and like this was when I think right after a year after those pricey. So,
Hmm.
uh, I was you were 3 books in, and at that point in time, I felt that okay, maybe this is not that huge a crowd, like the Anuja Chauhan fan box, and I was just like, oh wow, it was just a completely packed coffee house, and that just took me aback.
Hmm.
But what you're saying is absolutely right, right? Like I think your fans are or your readers are people who genuinely empathize with your book, are people who really get your humor, love your
Yeah.
humor, the way you're writing your characters, and that kind of draws them towards your work. Something that I wanted to ask you about was, do you think your persona beyond an author, like as you mentioned, you're very public with who you are as a person and about things that you do. Do you think that also builds in towards what connects you with your fans? To the extent that okay, so this is something that I've always observed about you. I don't know if you do this consciously or subconsciously, but whenever you're sitting at an event or like in a video or anywhere, you are always sitting cross-legged. Even if you're on stage, you're not sitting very formally on a chair. Your legs are on the chair, which is excellent. It just breaks this formal barrier that exists between the audience and the speaker or the author. There,
Hmm.
it's just, oh wow, oh, you know what? She's not this hoity-toity person who probably would be very snobby when I meet her. It's just, oh, she's very, I know, she has this casual vibe to her. Do you think that adds to your general reader, like just builds
Yeah.
into this
See,
relationship you have with your readers?
I think it does, because I get this feedback a lot. A lot of people say like, "Oh, you sit like this," but it's not a conscious thing. I started sitting like this when I worked in advertising. We'd go for these meetings, and typically, whenever they would say, "Now Anuja will take you through something," it would be a narration, right? So I would be
Right.
narrating a script, and when you're narrating a script, to me, somehow sitting cross-legged feels very natural, because you're like, "Okay, film opens on whatever," and you can't
Hmm.
really do that sitting very stately. So it just became my default storytelling position,
Right.
and then I sat like that, like in conference rooms all over the world, and it was fine, and so I
Hmm.
guess then just it's comfortable because I'm sitting down to chat, I'm sitting on a podium, I've come to meet people. Yeah, writing is
Right.
a lonely business. I spend most of my time in my pajamas typing away frantically. So when I go out, I'm so happy to meet. I'm like, hello, hello, happy to meet everyone. I've come here to have a chat and find out what you guys think, and what I think, and have that chat. So for me, comfy body language is just part of comfy conversation.
Right. Yeah, and that actually translates into, like, it's not just a thought, like it actually comes across as that. Because like I've met you a couple of times, and both of those times have just been, oh wow, she radiates happiness or radiates joy. It's just one of those,
I'm usually just
those things,
happy to be out
like,
there meeting
yeah,
people.
exactly, exactly,
I'm
exactly. Even if it's just from that perspective or that intention, oh wow, I'm getting to meet people, it just comes across as this, oh wow, you really, just gravitate towards this person where you want to talk to
and
a person who's happy.
sometimes I've usually had a glass of wine also.
Maybe that adds to it. Maybe. So, But now that you mentioned something, that you mentioned narration, and that just ticked off one of those things that I have to talk about is the Zoya Factor movie, right? And
Yeah.
like there are loads of dimensions to it which I want to explore, but I'll try to be as succinct as possible. Firstly, it was your debut book, right? And it was written like almost a decade ago, and then it just came out. And I remember being very excited even throughout this 10 years whenever there was news about it. When Red Chilies was or had optioned the book, that was the only thing you'd find online. Like, you'll just somewhere it would just come up that something's happening, and this kept happening. And anyway, so how did it feel to, I don't know, transition from like to see something that you've written to completely come as a movie on screen, right? And then I don't just mean it in the good positive sense that, oh, how did it feel, like in terms of, oh, wow, my work's on screen, but in terms of, oh, I don't know, I didn't really intend this to be like when
Yeah.
you wrote a particular scene, this is
Yeah.
not how I imagined this would play out. Or I don't know, like it's obviously very difficult to compress like a 300-400 page book into
No,
like
no.
a two
See,
two
the
and a half
thing
hour
is,
movie.
yeah, the Zoya Factor movie is a classic demonstration of why I'm a novel writer. Why I sit in my bedroom and I write books, right? Because
Right.
when I do that, I have complete creative control. And this happened to
Mhm.
me. I worked on Pepsi for 14 years, and I would write a script. I would see it a certain way in my head, and I would go excitedly to Bombay, and we would shoot it, and it would very often not be come out the way I would have wanted it to come out, right? Because I
Right.
feel there's so much shit that's out of your control. There are budgets, and then there is some movie star who'll have his own point of view on everything. Then there'll be some cricketer who can't act for toffee. So you're imagining, Sachin aise bolega, and by the time Sachin says it, you're like, oh my god. So there's that kind of stuff. There's a director, a producer, there's 50,000 things. There's research that goes down, and so finally the film that comes out is not really the ad script you wrote,
Right.
and increased frustration was that is what drove me to writing novels in the first place. And when I see the Zoya Factor movie, it again reminds me of why I'm in the novel writing business. Because in the
Right.
novel writing business, I have complete creative control. I can cast whoever I want. I can
Mhm.
describe a stadium as big as I like. I can put in as many characters and so on.
Mhm.
So it's that. Now in India, the point is that when you sell movie rights, people respect you more. You know, it's a
Mhm.
fact. Like you go to a party and you say, "जी मैं
Mhm.
किताब लिखती हूँ." जैसे नहीं मेरी जो novel बाज है ना वो यशराज ने पढ़ा अच्छा यशराज ने suddenly you're like you're
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
important.
Right.
So it's that. So then you're like, okay, fine. Then if this gets a reaction out of people at parties, why not just. But for me, like that's again like I always say this that I don't write kunjis for the movies. I don't write a
Mhm.
blueprint for a movie. I'm writing a
Right.
novel. When you read my book, you should see your own Zoya and your own Nikhil and your own Karol Bagh and your own everything, right?
Right.
The way
Right.
you like it, or the
Okay.
market you grew up in, or the cricketer you had a crush on, or the girl who you happen to think is cute, right? So,
Mhm.
and that is the magic of books. That
Right.
it's your imagination. The movie is unspooling in your head. And where will a real film ever match up? And why the Zoya factor? Any book that has been, I'm dreading the suitable boy adaptation. I'm so worried that it's going to be all wrong. I'm so worried because I love that. I really love that book. And I'm
Mhm.
saying, like, acha, theek hai, I'll have manageable expectations and,
Right.
I'll hope they'll do it well and so on. But whether it's a Princess Diaries or it's anything that anyone has made, I've been let down, have my heart broken so many times. Yeah, what was that Anne with the E they did with Anne with Green Gables and just like even the Lord of the Rings. I mean, like whatever, it never really matches up.
That's kind of true. Like, I mean, I remember, like, so, okay, personal confession, I haven't seen the movie yet because not because I didn't have the opportunity to, it just,
No, no, I mean it's on Netflix. I mean, like
yeah, I
whatever.
know, I know it's on Netflix. I know it's there on my watch list. It's something that my mouse is like hovered over. And just before I click it, like I have this conversation with a couple of my close friends. Again, like I have a few close friends, which I'm lucky enough to also be Anuja Chauhan fans. So we end up
Oh,
discussing
thank
your
you.
work and like our chats are often,
Not
oh, did
the
you see
same,
what this
yeah,
was?
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
So
It's not.
so
It's
it's
not very.
yeah. So they watched the movie and they were not very, like, they were disappointed by it. In general, they were like
Yeah.
they like I unfortunately had exams when it came out, and they all of us were in that boat. Oh, you know what, we don't really, at this point in time, we don't care what the movie is like, but because it's an Anuja Chauhan, it's based on Zoya factor, like it's you have to go and watch that movie. And they weren't really happy with how the movie turned out, and now I'm just scared that it might like affect my memory of the
No,
movie
not.
or the book.
And I have just decided that whatever anybody makes next, because on based on my books, I'm not going to get involved with it, and I'm not going to get excited about it. I just keep my head down. I keep writing my books and saying, you read my books. So because I've realized that again, you have no. There's a director. Director will come in. He's got his own thing going on.
Right.
There are actors who got their own thing going on. So you're like, yeah, like forget it. And honestly, I'm not that much of a control freak that I can go to Bombay and be a director. It's just not my thing. I can't do it. It's being a director. First, you have to be an egomaniac. Secondly, you have to be so driven and so passionate and have so much stamina. It's just not my thing. So to me, writing books is the correct size, the amount of work I can manage, and of course that means my audience is smaller. But like I keep saying to you, my audience is cooler, and I just feel so happy about that.
We feel happy to be classified as cool in your books. Like it just kind of boosts it. But what you're saying is exact. It's like really true. Like when you're reading a book, I think the problem is when people regard books as stories and just that when they are so much more than it. So that's when.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I'm cutting in, but I'm just saying, like, I remember now because nowadays Ramayana is coming, the Doordarshan Ramayana is coming on TV. I remember when I was a child and the Ramayana came on TV the first time, I was so cheated. I was like, who are these people? What is this? Ye Ram hai. Matlab, isn't he supposed to be really young and like, studying in like a part? What is it? So I'm saying that, like, what is it? Cardboard swords and some strange people. And it's like, wow, so since then, like, it's just bad. And I remember the Mahabharata came out, I had a huge crush on, like Krishanji was my favorite, my mythological figure. And I just loved him. And whatever, he was a sweet guy. But I was just like, he's wrong. He's wrong. He's so wrong. Everybody is so wrong.
Yeah,
so it just happened. You can't. Like, you look at Jesus, the way I'm talking about big books now. You look at Jesus Christ, like, what is this? He looks wrong again to me. If you read the Bible, he wouldn't look like that. Everyone is just doing their own thing. So it's better to just read your Bible and have your own Jesus in your head, no?
I know, right? That's such a beautiful world that exists out there, right? Like your characters are molded the way your perception of the book is and from what you understood of the character and it's in most, like 90% of the cases, like you'll always be disappointed by the.
I mean, that Voldemort is so wrong. Look at that bloody Voldemort. What is wrong? What is that person? I find it so wrong. I find so many things wrong in the Harry Potter movies. Yeah.
Oh, there's so much like how they're flying. How's everyone flying throughout the books? Like they're flying from I think the fourth movie or something, wherein flying, like I don't know, just one of those things I was recently discussing with someone. The entire
they don't need a broom, they don't need anything. They're like
bas udte hain. Seedha udte hain. And even that last battle between Voldemort and Harry, what was
I
that?
stopped
Like they
watching.
After
the third movie, I stopped watching.
Yeah, good call on that. Like it's just one of those things. Yeah. Like I think I ended up watching it on that again the same zone where I was with the Zoya factor. It's a Harry Potter movie. I have to watch it. Dekhna padega. And then you end up watching it and you're like, nahi yaar, this is so wrong. They shouldn't have done this.
I mean, the first movie wasn't so horrific. I quite liked it, but I hated Fluffy. Fluffy didn't look at all fluffy. He was wrong. But like I like the kids they cast and the initially, but after that it was just wrong. It was bad.
Hope all of you loved that episode. If you did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel and our podcast. Please tell us how you like this podcast through the comment section below. We'll be back with another amazing episode of the Kitabi Karwan Podcast. Thank you for listening.